Welcome to our presentation of our project on buildings and technology in ancient China, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. We have spent a while collecting information on the buildings and technology in these civilizations, and I couldn't think of any other way to present the facts. So I made this very informative video to show you all the junk we have dredged from history books. Back on topic. First stop, ancient Egypt. One of the first things I learned about technology in ancient Egypt was the invention of the inclined plane, a ramp for all you slightly less educated people out there. The Egyptians used this ramp to haul massive blocks of stone up to the building sites of pyramids. We use ramps a lot in our lives. You can see them in lots of things, for example, highways, axes, and other things. One thing that was very prevalent in small ancient Egyptian society was that privacy was only for the rich. Most farmers had small houses that could only fit 6 to 10 people at a time. They usually had only one floor and 3 small rooms. Accommodations in town were slightly better. The townhouses usually had 3 stories. The bottom for supplies, the middle for living space, and the top for grain storage. If you were lucky, your house might have a window or a door somewhere. Now back to tech. Geeking out on Egyptian buildings is giving me a headache. The Egyptians were a farming people. Since they lived on the banks of the Nile River, the soil was nutrient-rich and very good for growing crops. Egyptian farmers developed a system of canals to carry water from the Nile to crops farther away than would be possible without the irrigation system. This is called irrigation. Since the crops grown could be used to make flour, then bread, and the Egyptians had a ready source of power from the Nile and irrigation channels, they invented the undershot water wheel. It was powered by the force of water moving under its blades. This power was used to power many things like, no surprise, a flour mill. Now, on to the next civilization, ancient Mesopotamia. The Mesopotamians were a very clay-based society. They used baked clay to build their houses, which usually had 1 story and surrounded a courtyard. They also used reeds to build mattresses, floors, and roofs since they were easy to come by. They lived next to rivers. Yeah. The wealthy had 2 stories to their homes, with sleeping chambers on the top story usually. They were usually higher in the world. Get it? Higher up since they're... Oh, okay. Okay, enough with the jokes. And on to that note, to the more technological aspects of Mesopotamia. One of the main inventions to come out of Mesopotamia was bronze. Bronze is an alloy or a combination of copper, tin, and sometimes other metals. This was such a big leap forward in metal-making technology, it spawned a new age, the Bronze Age. Here's another Mesopotamian invention that you might have heard of. It's a little thing called the wheel. It was used to make carts that could carry goods heavier than other things easier. The wheel changed the world. We use it nowadays a lot in cars, airplanes, trains, water wheels. And yeah, here's another Mesopotamian invention that you might have heard of. It's called the pottery wheel. As I said before, Mesopotamians were a very clay-based society. They used clay in everything: bowls, pots, houses, and urns, among other things. So it wouldn't be a surprise that they were one of the first peoples to invent the pottery wheel. It had a big wheel on the bottom that was connected to a smaller wheel on top by an axle on which clay was placed. The potter would spin the larger bottom wheel with their feet. This would spin the smaller top wheel with the clay on top so it could be shaped by hand to be more circularly symmetrical. Another invention to come out of Mesopotamia, they really do like spinny things, was the lathe. The lathe consisted of an axle that was spun by a bow-like thing on which was a piece of wood or other things. It was carved into a circular shape by a blade mounted on the frame. We still use this invention today to make things like chess pieces, chair feet, and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, that's enough of Mesopotamia. Let's head over to our final civilization, ancient China. Ancient China's building designs depended on wealth and power. Most of the richer people had courtyard houses. The northern courtyard houses had a large central courtyard to let in light and had double doors to the outside and thick walls to shield it from the winds. In the south, houses usually had thinner walls. Most houses in China were oriented south to avoid winds coming from the north. Poor people only had small huts made out of bamboo with a small hole in the roof to let out smoke from cooking fires. Most of these houses had stilts to elevate them off the ground and to protect them from frequent floods. A lot of people also stored their grain and other things underneath the house. Now, on to the technology of China, and this one's a doozy. Chinese soil could withstand great heat, so it could be used for iron furnaces. This prompted the invention of a water-powered bellows to make the fire burn hotter and melt metals faster. The newly invented machine made making iron easier, and soon iron molds came along to make mass productions of things like farm tools even easier. China had a large army with many archers. The bow and arrow was a powerful weapon, but it was cumbersome to carry and took too long to notch an arrow. Also, the power of a large bow was limited by the strength of the man drawing it. So the Chinese invented a new weapon, the crossbow. This weapon was basically a bow that was drawn by a crank, eliminating the need for an archer to use his own strength to draw it very much. Also, it had a trigger that enabled the archers to wait with the crossbow loaded and eliminated the wait time as the archer strung his bow. The crossbow was a major advantage in wars for the Chinese. They could sit back and pick off the enemy from a distance away. And they could also be ready for the enemy when they came. It was such a success that it spread to most civilizations. And that, my friends, is all the juicy facts that Ben and I have dredged up from the deep, dark regions of the past. I hope you enjoyed this presentation on ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China. See you next time!